They stayed close to the studio and worked through a snow-packed morning to keep the show on air. Both hosts adjusted plans and the production scale back to match hazardous conditions in the Upper West Side. Kelly Ripa and Mark Consuelos spent the night in a hotel directly across from the show's studio to avoid commuting through the blizzard. Ripa said they intended a short, safe walk to work, but heavy snow and strong wind made even that short trip difficult. Choosing the hotel prioritized reliability for the live taping of Live with Kelly and Mark. The move kept the hosts available for scheduled segments and reduced risk of late arrivals that would disrupt the program's lineup. Hotel arrangements reflected the urgency of the storm. It also showed how the couple and production team balanced personal safety with the demands of a morning talk show during an extreme weather event. The episode aired without a live audience, leaving the studio unusually quiet for a show usually buoyed by crowd reactions. Kelly and Mark adjusted pacing and banter to fit the smaller, more intimate setting. Producers replaced audience-driven moments with more conversational segments and extended interviews. Regular features ran but with fewer live cues, and guests joined while the show maintained its usual energy despite the lack of applause. The emptier studio highlighted production logistics. Camera framing changed, staff presence was reduced, and sound mixing shifted to avoid dead air. The result was still polished television, but with a markedly different atmosphere than typical Upper West Side tapings. The blizzard forced multiple daytime productions to adapt. Audiences were canceled and some staff stayed home or could not reach the studio. Live with Kelly and Mark was among programs that went audience-free, altering how producers planned segments and managed timing. Executive producer Michael Gelman could not make it from Florida, which left the on-site team to handle last-minute adjustments. Other shows in the city issued similar changes, reflecting transit closures and safety protocols across networks. Broadcasters emphasized host safety and continuity. For viewers, the changes meant more intimate interviews and fewer crowd moments. For crews, it meant tighter coordination, hotel logistics near the Upper West Side studio, and contingency plans for future extreme weather events. The show built a daily rhythm that mixed celebrity interviews, audience interaction, and personal moments that often blurred an off-screen life. Its long run ties together changing co-hosts, New York studio locations, and the show's role in hosts' careers and family lives. 7 Lincoln Square served as the show's home for decades, and became a personal workplace for Kelly Ripa and Mark Consuelos. The building hosted countless live broadcasts, holiday specials, and the visits of their children, who often waited backstage. Ripa has said her kids grew up in this building, reflecting how the set doubled as family space. The studio's layout and sight lines helped shape recurring segments and audience energy. Producers like Michael Gelman and longtime staff became part of the show's extended family, and on-air moments with guests felt intimate because of that physical setting. Closing the Upper West Side studio marked the end of a tangible era tied to specific memories and routines. The program traces its lineage to long-running iterations such as Live with Regis and Kathy Lee, and has featured marquee personalities who defined daytime TV. Regis Philbin and Kathy Lee Gifford set the conversational template in the 1980s and 1990s. Later co-hosts included Michael Strahan, whose sports to entertainment transition reshaped audience demographics, and Ryan Seacrest, who brought a polished, multimedia presence. Kelly Ripa joined in 2001 and gradually became the show's anchor across partner changes. Mark Consuelos moved from guest and partner into a formal co-host role in 2023, adding a family throughline that audiences followed. The show's roster reads like a timeline of modern daytime, reflecting changes in tone, format, and audience expectations while keeping the live, conversational core. The relocation to 7 Hudson Square, part of the Walt Disney Company's Robert A. Iger building, shifted the program to a downtown media hub shared with other ABC properties. The move placed the show alongside productions such as The View and The Tamron Hall Show, and anticipates closer integration with network resources and cross-show opportunities. Operational changes came with new studio configurations, updated tech, and different street access for audience members. The move also reflected corporate consolidation under Disney, with logistics handled centrally at the Robert A. Iger building. For viewers, the new space promises refreshed staging, while the show retains the live with Kelly and Mark name and its emphasis on live conversation. They woke to a city that sounded different, not the usual rumble of cabs and subway trains, but a muffled, vast hush, as if New York had been wrapped in a blanket and told to sleep. Through the hotel window across from the studio, snow moved like a hand painting everything white. Tree limbs bowed, traffic lights blinked through veils of flurries, and the sidewalk outside the building where they had spent the night was a single uninterrupted slope. Kelly and Mark had meant to make the short, safe walk that morning, an arrangement born of a weather report they'd hoped would underplay reality. But what had been projected as a heavy snow turned into an historic blizzard, and a short walk became an expedition. They stepped into that white world together, shoes crunching, breath fogging, the hotel's revolving door hissing shut behind them. For fans, the image would have been cinematic, two familiar faces in a blizzard, making their way across the street to keep morning television alive. For Kelly and Mark, it was practical, intimate, a tiny human decision threaded into a much larger, communal moment. The decision to sleep across the street had been logistical, avoid commuting collapse, ensure the show could air, but it was also an act of mutual reassurance. If the city failed them, at least the studio would not. The live studio, even on normal days, thrummed with a particular kind of electricity. The click of cameras, the soft thump of cue cards being shuffled, the orchestra of hair, makeup, and last-minute script scribbles. On this morning, there was much less of the orchestra. The lobby was nearly empty. The ushers, who usually greeted in layers of sweaters and smiles, had chosen safety over routine and were home with families, or simply stranded like everyone else. The audience chairs sat like a waiting room of ghosts. The usual harmonic roar of applause, the sound that buoyed hosts through awkward segues and saved floundering interviews, was simply not there. They walked in together and took in the silence with the kind of practiced calm hosts learn to wear. Kelly, who had become the anchor of so many mornings since stepping into the role in 2001, felt the absence in a way that was almost physical. Mark stood a pace behind, hands shoved into his coat pockets against the cold, eyes tracking the staff who were already reshuffling plans. A production meeting had happened in abbreviated form, where roles were reassigned on the fly, and the playlist of the morning was rewritten. The show must go on, the old adage insisted, but the way it would go on now was different, smaller, quieter, arc-shaped to fit the contours of Hazard. They received updates. The audience canceled, producers working with skeletal crews, key staff unable to make it in from out of town. Michael Gelman, the executive producer whose name had been part of the show's extended family for decades, could not make it from Florida. His absence that morning felt emblematic of everything the blizzard had rewritten: plans, personnel, routes, assumptions. And yet the on-site team, those who had braved the storm, moved through the adjustments with a kind of practiced grace. Camera operators recalibrated, producers shortened cues, and the sound team softened the mix to avoid any dead air magnified by the empty room. The studio itself, whether you remembered it as 7 Lincoln Square or the newer 7 Hudson Square in the Robert A. Iger building, had always been more than a physical space. It was a place of rituals, families waiting backstage, the hush before an interview, a kid's giggle off camera that made a host forget a line only to recover with a laugh that felt authentic. Today, those rituals were reconfigured into something more intimate. Without the audience's roar to pull them along, Kelly and Mark readjusted their pacing and banter to fit the smaller room. They turned more often to each other. In the early minutes of the broadcast, their exchange felt like two people finding footing on a thin, shifting stage, acknowledgement of the storm, gratefulness that they could walk, a quiet joke to fill the space that, in the absence of applause, became its own kind of music.